What's everyone, it is Finn here and welcome back to my African World Cup qualifier predictions for match week 6. Now of course, before we jump into today's predictions, a tiny bit of a disclaimer that I am recording this while match week 5 is currently going on in order to get the video out in time. So at the time of recording, not every team has played yet this international break, but I'm sorry, I just can't time travel. It's the best I can do.
Is that not what you're supposed to do?
But of course, you guys also know the drill by now. We have over 20 games to talk about in today's video. So without wasting any more of your time, jumping into our first game, it is Kenya versus Gabon. Now, of course, South African football royalty, Benny McCarthy, the brand new Kenyan coach, picked up a draw in his first match. He is still unbeaten with a 3-3 result versus the Gambia. Now, they did end up picking up that equalizer in stoppage time. Obviously, a really solid performance for Benny McCarthy and his team. But at the end of the day, I do think Gabon will be a lot trickier to break down. They picked up a 3-0 win versus the Seychelles. They are definitely more threatening when it comes to attack and definitely a lot more resilient when it comes to defense. I'm sorry, Benny McCarthy, but I could see this one going to the Gabon. I'm going to say 2-0. We also have Eswatini versus Mauritius. Now, Mauritius picked up a 1-0 loss versus Cape Verde in their first game, as expected, while Eswatini picked up a 0-0 draw versus Cameroon, an African football giant. Now, yes, I've made you guys all aware many times that I don't think Cameroon are necessarily the most consistent team out there.
No.
But it is still a big result for Eswatini, and they are one of those teams that can make it very tricky for you to score against them, although they don't necessarily score a lot of goals themselves. I definitely think that they are the favourites here in this fixture. If I don't go for a 0-0 draw, I'm at least going to go for just a 1-0 win in Eswatini's favour. Namibia versus Equatorial Guinea. Namibia picked up a 1-0 win versus Malawi in their first game, and they're also one of those teams that can be really tricky and could genuinely grab points for absolutely any top footballing nation, especially in Africa. But looking at Equatorial Guinea, although they haven't played yet at the time of recording, they can also be very tricky to play against. They can always kind of sneak in the goals. In fact, they're so good at sneaking in goals, the Golden Boot winner from the last AFCON wasn't actually even eligible to play for Equatorial Guinea.
How'd that get in there?
But jokes aside, I do think this is a top nation. Although they haven't played Sao Tome and Principe yet at the time of recording, I would imagine that they'll be coming off of a very confident win by the time this video comes out, and I do think they'll continue here with a 2-1 win versus Namibia. For Liberia versus Sao Tome and Principe, as I said, Sao Tome and Principe haven't played at the time of recording, but I'm going to imagine they would feel pretty crushed by this time, where Liberia, although they did lose 1-0 to Tunisia, definitely a better overall quality footballing nation. Once again, can be resilient on their day, and although no, they haven't been in a fantastic place lately, they should at least take this one 2-0. Okay, for the Central African Republic versus Mali, this is a very easy fixture for me to predict because Central African Republic lost 4-1 to Madagascar, a nation that 90% of the world just think has zoo animals on it.
Yes, girl, you huge.
We're looking at Mali. They picked up a 3-0 win versus Comoros, a nation that can be very tricky to get past. So both teams once again having a very different sided kind of first match this international break. I have to go for Malawi here with a very confident 3-0 win. Okay, for Guinea-Bissau versus Burkina Faso, another easy prediction here. Guinea-Bissau lost 3-1 to Sierra Leone in their first game, and although Burkina Faso haven't played yet, I've gushed on about their quality in the past before. They've got so much quality throughout their team. I really back them as a nation. They should get another, I'm going to go 3-0 here. We also have Madagascar versus Ghana. Now, as I said, Madagascar picked up a very confident win just the other day, while Ghana haven't played yet, and they've definitely been on a huge slump over the last few years, not qualifying for the upcoming AFCON. And when these nations do play against each other, which seems to be often as of late, it is never an easy fixture for either of these two nations. But at the end of the day, I still feel like my gut feeling goes in Ghana's direction. I'm just going to give them a 1-0 win here, and I'm saying that purely based on the quality in their team, even though they are suffering with injuries. Okay, for Ivory Coast versus the Gambia, as I said, Gambia did get 3 past Kenya in their first game, but they also did concede 3, which versus the current champions of the African Cup of Nations, come on, there has to be a favourite here in my opinion. It has to be the Cote d'Ivoire, and I'm going to give them a 3-0 win here. They've still got quality throughout their whole team, and they are one of those nations that even when a player does seem to age and kind of falls out of the squad, they do have new youngsters coming into their team. As I said, I've got a strong favourite here. For Tunisia versus Malawi, once again, another very strong, confident prediction here in my opinion, because Malawi did lose to Namibia 1-0 in their first game, while Tunisia are currently flawless in their group with 0 goals conceded.
Nothing goes over my head. My reflexes are too fast.
They have been a very tough cookie to crack, to crumble. I don't know what the saying is, but regardless of that, Tunisia, I would be shocked if they did not get a very comfortable win here. I'm going to go at least 3-0 to be honest. For Ethiopia versus Djibouti, neither team necessarily at the top of their game, although I guess in the last half a decade we've seen a tiny bit more from Ethiopia. Once again, I don't really have, I'm going to be honest, I don't care too much about this game. I'm going to go 0-0. For Botswana versus Somalia, I'm going to go for Botswana here with the 1-0 result. As we know, Somalia are not a very strong footballing nation at all, where Botswana have just qualified for their second ever African Cup of Nations. Just in terms of what I've seen over the last year or two, I'm going to back my Southern African country. Okay, now Benin versus South Africa. This game will not be as easy as one thinks. Obviously, as a South African, I really back our nation. Picking up third place at the last AFCON, I've spoken about their quality in their team. As a whole, I really believe we are one of the biggest underdogs in African football.
No question about it, I am ready to get hurt again.
But looking at Benin, we can't ignore the fact that at the time of recording, they are currently top of the group and they are looking very, very dangerous. I do fear that South Africa, we might underestimate the nation, and although I do think overall that maybe we will qualify for the World Cup, I do think that this result could go down to a 1-1. But you know what, I have to be semi-biased. I'm going to go 2-1 here for South Africa, but it won't be easy. For Rwanda, Lesotho, now I don't have too much confidence in either of these two teams in the long run, qualifying for the World Cup of course, but I do think if I had to choose one nation here, I would go for Rwanda. They've shown results in the past versus Nigeria, versus South Africa, that they can really be underestimated and it can slap you on the back. I do think Rwanda will take this one. Let's just go for a 1-0 win. Okay, for Uganda, Guinea, I was really thrown off guard by the fact that Uganda were beaten, 3-1 in their first game by Mozambique. I definitely did not expect that because heading into this tournament, they seem to be in semi-good form. We obviously know Guinea have a lot of really top talent in their team. I always reference the likes of Garassi. I don't know. I do feel like this game could easily be a 1-1 draw. So, you know, to be honest, I'm going to go for that. Also have these Super Eagles of Nigeria versus Zimbabwe. Now, I always speak about Zimbabwe quite fondly. I do think that they are a nation that could easily draw a 0-0 out of absolutely any nation. But once again, you do look at the quality in this Nigerian team, and I know African football is not always that predictable where you can just go for the better team. But in this instance, I absolutely have to. They do have so much quality throughout. And one of the biggest improvements they've had over the last year or two is their defense, where they've always had the star quality up front. So I do think that they will take this one 3-0. For Angola versus Cape Verde, this is seriously a fixture to watch because both nations I do feel like are seriously underrated at the moment. Cape Verde at the time of recording are currently top of the group, I believe. While looking at Angola, once again, they've been picking up a lot of draws. I do think that there was something like 22 games unbeaten in their last 24.
Say what now?
Which is a stupid number to look at. And honestly, I do feel like either of these two teams could qualify for the tournament at the end of the day. I do think in terms of a result though, once again, we did see Angola. They almost did lose to the likes of Libya. But at the end of the day, I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw here. I do think both teams will bring out the best of each other. For Egypt versus Sierra Leone, obviously Sierra Leone getting that massive win versus Guinea-Bissau. Egypt not playing yet at the time of recording. This could seriously be a fixture to watch. And it could be a very high scoring game, to be honest. I do feel like it could be maybe a 2-2 kind of result. Obviously yet to see Egypt play at the moment. I would not be surprised with Mo Salah's luck at the moment, being knocked off the Champions League and obviously the Carabao Cup as well, if he ended up losing this as well and the Ballon d'Or completely disappears.
Ooh, you're hard, showing off.
But jokes aside, I would still have to favor Egypt here. I'm going to go for Egypt, let's say 2-1. Sudan versus South Sudan. I do feel like this was once again one of those games where both teams will kind of bring the best out of each other and they will match each other's likeliness when it comes to both attacking and defensive ability. Obviously, as I said in my previous video, I did go watch South Sudan live versus South Africa and they were abysmal when it came to defense. So this could very much be a 0-0 draw, but kind of knowing that South Sudan, once again, they really do struggle, especially versus wide attacking play, I find. I'm going to go for Sudan here with a 1-0 win. For Burundi versus Seychelles, yeah, once again, it's one of those games that probably could go either way, to be honest with you. Obviously, looking at Seychelles being absolutely smacked by Gabon in their previous game, I don't have too much faith in them. Looking at Burundi once again, yeah, they are probably that kind of nation that could draw a 0-0 out of most teams. So I'm going to go for another 0-0 draw here.
Boring!
For Cameroon versus Libya. Now this could be a very exciting game because obviously Libya just drew to Angola, but if they didn't do so, they would have been top of this group. So once again, we can't underestimate their ability just because they're 1 or 2 positions below that. We're looking at Cameroon, as I spoke about a tiny bit earlier. They did get that draw versus Eswatini. Last year they got that draw versus Namibia. Cameroon are just way unpredictable, but I do guess that maybe that shows at least defensively they've kind of got that resilience, but on the attacking front, especially now that Abubakar's kind of got an older,
to bits. Becoming emotional now.
Not so much in the picture as much, although they obviously have Mbeumo and so many other top talents. Once again, they need to work on scoring more goals because something is just not clicking there. And versus Libya, it could very much be a 0-0 draw once again, but I'm going to go for Cameroon. Let's just give it a cheeky 1-0 win. More convincingly though, Senegal will take on Togo. Now once again, Togo, not necessarily a top footballing nation that can do it against anyone. Senegal is that nation that can do it against anyone. It is still in the last half a decade that they have won the African Cup of Nations, an older squad, but they'll take this 2-0. Okay, well, Comoros, as I've said earlier, is definitely a team that can shock absolutely everyone. I'm a huge fan of what they've done over the last few years. And versus Chad, once again, I'm sorry I'm rushing through this one, 2-0. We also have Algeria versus Mozambique. Now, Mozambique, much like a Zimbabwe and Namibia, lots of those southern African nations, they're all able to kind of pick up draws out of absolutely anyone. Algeria, when it comes to qualifiers, is normally pretty consistent, normally pretty good. This could be a 0-0 here, but looking at Algeria, I think they're going to end up getting a match-winning penalty at the end of the day with a 1-0.
It's part of the game, innit?
Second last game is Mauritania versus the DRC. Now the DRC is by far a better footballing nation, and I think in terms of new additions, bringing Bakambu back into the squad, into their attack, Tonzebe in defense, just overall ability, DRC should take this one. I'm going to give a very comfortable 4-0 win here. And finally, it's Morocco versus Tanzania. Now I think looking at Tanzania in the last qualifiers, they were the lowest scoring nation. When looking at Morocco, I mean, I don't have to talk about them for you to know how good they are. In terms of the goals they can score, the amount of goals they can score, in terms of defensive ability, they've got that rich amount of experience in their team. As much as exciting youth and players in their prime, I would be shocked if Morocco, I mean, this could actually get ugly, to be honest with you. Dare I say a 5-0 win here? I will watch it be 0-0 and everyone laughs at me, but I'm going to go for 5-0 here. But of course, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for my African World Cup qualifier predictions for match week 6. Of course, let me know what your predictions are down below. And of course, guys, if you're not subscribed, please make sure to subscribe as it helps the channel out massively. But guys, this has been fun. FYNN. Until next time, cheers.